Let's start now with our top story. The United States and India have failed to reach a trade deal during President Donald Trump's visit to the country. In a joint statement, Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said both sides have agreed to continue talks for an agreement. Both leaders signed memoranda of understanding on mental health, medical products, and anti-narcotics efforts. Trump said India will buy defense equipment worth over $3 billion from the U.S. Commenting on the visit, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Trump has asked India to play a role for regional stability. In a statement, Qureshi said President Trump has praised Pakistan's commitment for peace in the region. He said Trump must have seen the situation in Delhi due to the controversial Citizenship Amendment Act. The foreign minister said the U.S. president has expressed his concerns over the Kashmir dispute as well. Well, in New Delhi, 3 more people have been killed and dozens have been injured after violent clashes resumed in protests against the citizenship law. The death toll has risen to 7 in 2 days, with over 160 injured. Several shops and houses were set ablaze during riots as U.S. President Donald Trump arrived in the capital on a state visit. Fresh incidents of stone pelting from Manjpur, Brahmpuri were reported in New Delhi on the second day of clashes. Police said the situation in the capital remains very tense as the department is continuously receiving calls of violence. Meanwhile, Mumbai has been put on high alert after the clashes in New Delhi. 34 people have been killed since protests against the disputed citizenship law began in December. A minister of India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party has strongly batted for a law to shoot at sight those who raise pro-Pakistan slogans. The statement comes after an Indian girl chanted "Long live Pakistan" at an anti-citizenship law rally in Bengaluru. In an interview, the agriculture minister in Karnataka, B.C. Patel, said there is a need for a law for those who speak ill of India. The minister said he is appealing to Prime Minister Narendra Modi to bring in such a law, and he will also write to Modi on the issue. The minister said these people enjoy the food, water, and air of India, so why should they be here if they raise pro-Pakistan slogans? Qatar has invited Pakistan to the signing of the U.S.-Taliban peace deal. Washington and the Taliban are set to sign the peace deal in Doha on February 29th. Meeting Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi in Islamabad, Qatar's ambassador handed him a formal invitation. Qureshi said Pakistan welcomes the signing of the peace agreement between the Taliban and the U.S. He said the deal will hopefully lead to intra-Afghan dialogue. Qureshi said Pakistan has always maintained that there is no military solution to the Afghan conflict. The foreign minister said Islamabad will continue playing its role for the peace and stability of Afghanistan. The UN Security Council has called on all parties to maintain their support for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In a statement, the UNSC said council members support a two-state solution where Israel and Palestine can live in peace. It also criticized Israel's recent threat to build thousands of more homes in East Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Israel continues launching airstrikes on Gaza for the second consecutive day. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will continue bombing Gaza.
Yesterday, we launched raids on more than one square in Syria and Gaza, and we are now continuing strikes with aircraft, tanks and helicopters. We will continue to strike until calm is restored to what it was. I send a message to the leaders of terrorist organizations. If calm is not restored, you are next.
Turkey says there is no consensus yet on a proposed March 5th summit with Russia, France, and Germany on Syria's Idlib. In a press conference, President Tayyip Erdogan said he may meet Russia's President Vladimir Putin on that date. Erdogan said a Russian delegation is set to come to Turkey on Wednesday to discuss the situation in Idlib. He said there is no full agreement yet between French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and President Vladimir Putin. On Saturday, Erdogan said Turkey has set out a roadmap for Syria after speaking with the 3 leaders. Meanwhile, the Kremlin said it is discussing the possibility of holding a 4-way summit. The conflict in Idlib escalated again at the beginning of February after government and militant forces renewed attacks. Libya's warring sides have suspended their participation in the UN peace talks scheduled for this week in Geneva. The Libyan National Army said the UN has not approved its 13 proposed delegates. Tripoli's government of national accord said it will also not take part in the dialogue until there is progress on military negotiations. This comes after the UN said Libya's warring sides proposed a draft ceasefire deal that will see displaced civilians return home. In a statement, the UN support mission in Libya said it will facilitate the ceasefire process. After the LNA and GNA suspended Geneva talks, prospects for a lasting truce still remain unclear. Libya has been mired in turmoil since the toppling of strongman Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. In China's outbreak of the new coronavirus, 71 people have died over the last 24 hours. That puts the death toll at 2,663. The National Health Commission says it has another 508 infections, bringing that number to over 77,000. More in this report.
With COVID-19 numbers growing worldwide, authorities are stepping up their campaign to contain the outbreak. In South Korea, another 60 cases have been confirmed, taking their total to 893. The country now has the largest national total anywhere outside China, with 8 people dying from the illness. The outbreak has led the US and South Korea to scale back a military exercise planned for the spring.
General Abrams and General Park are looking at scaling back the command post training due to concerns about the coronavirus.
Italy has called for public calm while reporting a slower increase in the number of infections after a spike at the weekend. 11 towns, 10 in Lombardy and 1 in the neighbouring Veneto area, have been locked down, with over 50,000 residents stopped from leaving. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte said residents could be quarantined for weeks.
The management at the level of the hospital structure has not really been faithful to the protocols that were recommended in these cases, and that has certainly contributed to the spread. But to this day, we continue to observe the utmost caution and rigor, and we promise you maximum concentration night and day.
In Vietnam, the health ministry says all 16 people infected with coronavirus have now recovered.
The US and the European Commission have announced a new allocation of funds to support the global campaign against the new coronavirus outbreak. In a statement, the Commission said the EU is working around the clock to support member states, while it has allocated $251 million. The Commission said part of those funds will be allocated immediately, while the rest will be released in the next months. The EU's Commissioner for Crisis Management, Janez Lenkarčič, said the aid package will support the World Health Organization and assist countries with weaker health systems. U.S. President Donald Trump wants another $2.5 billion from Congress to deal with the epidemic in a supplemental budget. The White House says over $1 billion of the requested sum will be allocated to develop a vaccine.
Of these 230 million, 114 million will go to World Health Organization's call for global preparedness. Further 15 million will go to support partner countries in strengthening their resilience and preparedness.
Well, U.S. public health groups have pushed the government for emergency funds, warning the high cost of fighting the virus will sap agencies. Japan has reiterated its pledge to hold the 2020 Tokyo Olympics in July amid the new coronavirus epidemic. Japan's health minister, Katsunobu Kato, said it is still too early to talk about canceling the mega event. The minister said the government is aware of the risks and putting preventive measures in place.
We're talking about the situation now. The Tokyo Olympics is taking place in July, so we're not talking about that situation. In the basic policy, we're talking about the government's position now.
Malaysia's king has called for a meeting of all members of parliament to decide the next prime minister. This comes after the king reappointed Mahathir Mohamad as the country's interim prime minister after his surprise resignation. Mahathir's resignation came amid rumors that his party was planning to form a new government, excluding Ibrahim Anwar. Ibrahim had accused his party of plotting to form a new government with the United Malays National Organization. The tussle between old rivals Mahathir and Ibrahim has shaped Malaysian politics for decades. The tension has persisted despite their alliance's win in the country's 2018 elections. The Prime Minister of East Timor has submitted his resignation to the president after the ruling coalition collapsed. Taurmatan Ruak says he is prepared to stay in office until the resignation is accepted. Ruak has served as Prime Minister since June 2018 after the collapse of two previous governments. The Southeast Asian nation gained independence from Indonesia in 1999 following a UN-supervised referendum. The country became fully independent in 2002 after 3 years of UN administration. 147 people have been murdered in Brazil's northeastern state of Ceará in the first 5 days of a military police strike. Over 200 officers have been suspended, while 37 have been arrested as the strike entered its 7th day. The homicide rate is 5 times higher than usual, which has led to the cancellation of carnival festivities in several cities. Brazilian law prohibits police officers from going on strike, while a court in Ceará said those defying the ban can face prison. Security has been strengthened by 2,500 soldiers and police officers who have not joined the strike.
In this first moment, we in theory are releasing some type of personnel who did not join the strike from the military police, so they can be redistributed and meet the priorities of the moment.
I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Welcome back. Now, a car that rammed into a carnival procession in central Germany on Monday injured 52 people, including 18 children. Police say they have arrested a 29-year-old German citizen on suspicion of attempted suicide, or homicide, I should say. Police said the crash in the town of Volksmarsen was deliberate and a probe is underway. Officials said among the injured, 35 people are still undergoing treatment. Following the incident, all carnival parades across the state were cancelled as a precaution. Monday's attack came less than a week after a far-right gunman killed at least 9 people in Hanau, sending shockwaves through Europe. In Slovakia, far-right leader Marian Kotleba, who is on trial on hate speech charges, could be the kingmaker in next week's parliamentary elections. His LSNS party is competing on a Slovakia first pitch, saying the government should put Slovak citizens before Brussels. This report has more.
The LSNS has muted some of its more controversial rhetoric as the elections draw closer. But in the past, party leaders have expressed respect for Joseph Tiso, Slovakia's Nazi Germany allied World War II era leader. Critics of the party say it has nothing to offer but hate and the victimization of marginalized communities.
They don't have any solutions. They attack certain groups, minorities. They make their stand against the weakest instead of offering an alternative. They don't have any program.
In 2016, the LSNS took 5th place with 8% of the votes in the parliamentary elections. But polls show its approval rating currently stands at 13%. In 2016, its tally was 3 times as much as the polls had forecast. This puts the party in a position to determine who leads the country by the end of the month. The ruling Smer party is struggling to clear the 5% threshold needed to get seats in parliament. As such, it may turn to the LSNS to form an alliance.
The rise of the LSNS party is not really their own success. It is rather the other party's inability to attract those who are leaning towards voting for LSNS.
LSNS leader Marian Kotleba faces 4 to 8 years in prison if he's convicted of backing calls to suppress individual freedoms on racial and religious grounds. 2 other members of his party are also on trial, facing charges of propagating hate speech against Jews, Muslims, and Roma Gypsies. The next hearing in Kotleba's trial has been postponed to 4th March, just after the elections.
The British government has banned 2 domestic right-wing terror groups, making their membership punishable by 10 years in prison. The decision is a response to the rise of neo-Nazi extremism in the UK. In a statement, the government said it will ban the Son and Craig Division and the System Resistance Network. The UK Home Secretary Priti Patel said recent attacks in Britain and Germany have highlighted the threat of violent extremism. She said banning the groups will make it harder for them to spread their hateful rhetoric. Meanwhile, the UK's domestic intelligence agency, the MI5, has assumed responsibility for rooting out far-right terrorism from the police. The Pentagon has committed to the ethical use of artificial intelligence by armed forces. In a statement, the U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper said America remains committed to responsible and lawful behavior. Esper pledged to establish explicit and well-defined uses for the AI technology. He said the technology will be governable, as the military will be able to deactivate systems that show unintended behavior. After 15 months of talks with U.S. technology giants and other stakeholders, previously vague principles were defined. The AI proposal has been a controversial one amid concerns that the machine itself cannot make ethical decisions. On the upper sea of Cortez, just off the coast of Mexico, activists have rescued a humpback whale caught in illegal fishing nets. This report has the details.
The Sea of Cortez on the west coast of Mexico was once called the world's aquarium. The vaqueta is a species of porpoise ubiquitous to the northern part of the Gulf of California. But the vaqueta is now on the brink of extinction. Members of the Sea Shepherd Conservation Organization had been patrolling the area, which is a vaqueta refuge, when they came across a humpback whale.
Yesterday, as we were guarding the critical zone, the Vaqueta Refuge, we found a humpback whale badly trapped in an illegal Totoaba net.
The whale was in trouble, caught in a net.
We took part in a disentanglement of a humpback whale in the critical zone in the Vaqueta Refuge, and it's a sad reminder of why it's so important for us to protect the refuge against illegal fishing.
Humpback whale numbers had fallen dramatically until the 1985 ban on commercial whaling. Since then, the numbers in many population groups have improved. Today, the biggest threat to humpback whales are collisions with ships and being caught up in fishing nets.
EU ministers are set to vote today to approve their mandate for post-Brexit trade talks with the UK. The document, approved by the EU General Affairs Council, will be the basis for future negotiations to be carried out by Michel Barnier. The document notes that a trade deal should be based on EU rules in some areas as a reference point. Meanwhile, UK ministers will also meet today at number 10 to discuss the government's opening stance for negotiations. The final agreement is due to be published online and presented in Parliament on Thursday. The UK Prime Minister's spokesman said London's primary objective in the talks is to ensure restoration of economic and political independence. Stock markets across Europe are trading higher following yesterday's slump, which wiped out about $1.5 trillion from global equities. Major stocks have bounced back as investors are jumping to capitalize on sell-off. London's FTSE 100 is trading about 0.5% higher after insurer Prudential plc shares rose about 3%. The CAC 40 in Paris has gained a fraction. Frankfurt's DAX has gained marginally as airliner Lufthansa stocks rise over 0.5%. In Asia, Nikkei 225 slumped, closing over 3% lower after shares of fast retailing dropped over 4%. Seoul's Kospi gained over 1%. Meanwhile, international Brent crude oil prices are trading fractionally higher. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And there you have it. You're all caught up. For the latest updates on these and other news stories, you can also follow us on our social media at Indus.news. Thanks for watching this bulletin here at Indus News.